Hi, this is Angela Galloway, and this is a lecture from Math 146. We are in Unit 2, which is Chapter 13, and I think this is our third lecture video. I'm going to be covering Section 13.3 today, which is somewhat of a short, it'll probably be a pretty short lecture compared to the other ones I've had recently. But 13.3 is all about truth in lending. So the reason why we have this section is like I said, one of the things we try to figure out in this class is what the best option is, right? So we did talk about APYs and APRs earlier, but now what we're going to do here is kind of look at the difference of, if I've got add-on interest somewhere and I'm given an APR somewhere else, and I've got all these different options. How do I figure out which is the best to go with? Okay, so what we're looking at here is the Consumer Credit Protection Act, which was actually passed back in 1968, has commonly been known as the Truth in Lending Act. One major issue that was addressed in the law that we're going to cover is how can we tell the true annual interest rate that a lender is charging. So for example, if we're trying to compare, we're going to buy a new oven at Sears with a 1.5% rate per month, or buying one elsewhere with 9% add-on interest, how could we tell, which one is a better option? So what it does is we're going to standardize the so-called true interest rate or annual percentage rates or the APR. All sellers are supposed to disclose this APR when asked, and the written contract must state the APR in all cases. So theoretically, we really shouldn't have to be able to calculate the APR because it should be somewhere on our, when we're signing all those forms, when we're buying something, somewhere in there, there should be the APR written out, or you can ask for it and you're supposed to be given it. But if you haven't gotten to the purchase part yet and you're just trying to decide which one do I want to go with, then you could do it this way and kind of figure out which would be your best option. Now, the formulas for finding the APR is actually pretty mathematically involved. So instead, what we're going to use and what many people use in real life is just this table that's actually provided by the Federal Reserve Bank. And so what it does is it gives you the percentages to the nearest half percent. So you're going to get a pretty good approximation of what the APR is. You're not going to get the exact APR, but you're going to know it's between like 12 and 12.5%. So you're going to get a pretty good idea of what it is. So what we do with this chart is you see here what we're going to be calculating is this finance charge per $100 of amount financed. What that means is how much am I paying for every $100 that I financed? Okay, so like if we look at this number here, $3.08, that's saying for every $100 I borrow, I'm paying $3.08 in a finance charge. Okay, so that's what that's talking about there. And so that's what we're actually going to calculate with our given information. So let's look at an example here. So back to the couch example, which we did earlier, let's find the actual APR of the loan. So Susan wanted to buy a new couch. She got one for $1,500. She paid $200 down, agrees to pay the balance at a 6% add-on rate for 2 years. So what we're saying is that this 6% add-on rate is not an APR. Okay, that doesn't tell us what we're going to be paying per year. Okay, what the annual percentage rate is. That's just saying we're adding on 6% for 2 years onto this amount that we're borrowing. It doesn't tell us what the APR is. So then if I was given an APR for a loan or something else, I couldn't just compare that to this, so I would have to, um, I've got to have something to be able to compare, apples to apples. So to be able to figure out what the APR is, we've already actually done this work here. Um, we'd already done all this in a previous problem, but just to review, we did the total amount financed, right, was $1,300. And then the finance charge, which remember is just the interest, is equal to 1,300 times 0.06 times 2, because we're doing 2 years there, equals $156. Now what we're trying to calculate is H. The reason why we're doing this is because that is how this table is set up. Okay, see we have this H here. So that's what we're trying to calculate. And the H is calculated by finding the finance charge per $100 of amount financed, okay? So this is the formula for that. Finance charge divided by amount financed times 100. So this equals H. Should be an H equals out here. So we did the finance charge right here, right? Remember, finance charge is just the interest. So we got $156 divided by our amount financed, which was $1,300. We multiply by 100, and that equals 12. And so this means for every $100 we borrowed here for a new couch, we paid $12 in interest, okay, or in finance charges. So of course we want this number to be low, right? The lower we pay, that means the lower APR we have, or the lower that we're charged for financing this item. So 12 represents H in the table. Now if you look back at the table, all of these numbers in here are H values, okay? But how do we know which row to go into, right? The column is what percentage rate it is, which is what we're going to find, okay? But how do we know which row to go in? Well, we look at the other thing we have to find is how many monthly payments are we going to have, okay? So we look back in this situation, since we're doing it for 2 years, 2 years means 24 months, right? There's 12 months in a year, so you do 2 times 12 and get 24 months. So we go back here and we find the 24-month row. Okay, so let's highlight that here. Get a color that'll work. So we want 24. So we're going to look in this row. Okay, thankfully it straightened that out for me. So 24 months. Now what we need to do is we'll find our H value, which is 12, and we're going to see where it falls in this row, okay? So 12 would fall somewhere between these two numbers, right? Somewhere here. So 12 would actually probably be closer to this number than to that one, right? But what this is telling us is that our APR is between 11% and 11.5%. And normally your homework wants you just to round to the nearest half percent. So since our 12 is closer to this number, right, than this one. And the way I figure out if it's closer is you can just subtract them, right? So 12 minus 11.86 is a smaller value than 12.42 minus 12, right? So it's closer to this value. So that means that our APR here is 11%. So we know we have the 6% add-on rate for 2 years. That doesn't tell us what the APR is, okay? The APR we have to calculate based off of the finance charge that is going to occur divided by the amount financed times 100, okay? And we use that chart and we find out that it's going to be approximately 11%. Okay, so let's do two more examples, just different ways. Some of your homework problems will be set up where, it gives an actual situation, what they're buying and all that stuff. Other times they're just going to give you that necessary information, okay? So here we've got the purchase price is $32.50. They had a down payment of $750. Add-on interest rate was 7% and the number of payments is 36. So we need to find two things, the amount financed and the finance charge, okay, which remember is the interest. Now, why do we need to find these things? Well, because the formula for H is finance charge divided by the amount financed, right? So those are the two things we need to find. So the amount financed is just the purchase price minus the down payment. Now, if there's no down payment, then your amount financed would just be the total purchase price. But generally, you're going to have a down payment on these problems. So the amount financed would be $32.50 minus $750, which gives us $2,500. Okay. Then we find the finance charge. Now, remember with add-on interest, you're going to do simple interest, right? Just I equals P times R times T. So P here is our amount financed, the $2,500, times the rate, which they gave us, the 0.07 for 7%, times the number of years. Now notice here that they actually gave us number of payments, which is not the number of years, right? It just tells us how many payments we made. But since we're making monthly payments, these are always going to be monthly payments, okay? You don't generally pay for your car every 5 months or anything, right? You pay for it every month. So all these add-on interest rate problems are talking about monthly payments. So if we had 36 monthly payments, that would equate to 3 years, right? A time of 3 years. So that's where we get the 3 from there. So 2,500 times 0.07 times 3 gives us $525. So now we plug these two numbers into our formula. We'll have 525 divided by 2,500 times 100, and that gives us 21. Okay, so that is the number we're going to look up in our chart. And the other thing we need to know is we need to know how many payments we have, right? And that one actually gave it to us. It's 36 payments. So we're going to go back to our chart. We're going to do the 36 row here. Okay. And then we are going to find where our number H, which is 21, falls. And so if you look here, 21 falls right between these two numbers, right? 20.43 and 21.3. So 21 falls right there, pretty close to the 21.3. So our APR is 13%. Okay, so we would have an APR of 13%. Okay, now here's another example. Purchase price is $74.80. The down payment is $2,200, and the add-on interest rate is 5%. And then we have the number of payments is 18. So again, we find the amount financed and the finance charge. The amount financed is the purchase price minus the down payment, and so we get 52.80. The finance charge is 52.80 times 0.05 times, now this comes from 18 over 12 is there's 18 payments, so that means 18 months. Remember I said anytime the time is in months, we need to divide by 12. So we just do 18 over 12. I mean, you could also realize that 18 months is a year and a half, so you could use 1.5 there. You know, any of those are the same thing. But sometimes it's just easier to, if it's in months, just put it over 12. Now that's what we did here too. 36 over 12 just happens to be 3. So, you know, it came out to a nice whole number there. And so when we do this, we get $396. So we do H equals 396 divided by 5280 times 100, and we get 7.5. All right, so this time when we go to our chart, we're looking for what? Number of payments is 18. So we're looking for the 18 row and seeing where 7.5 falls. So the 18 row is right here. Okay, and let's see where 7.5 falls. 7.5 is going to be right here, right? So that would be closest to the 9.5%. Right, so this one is going to be just an APR of 9.5%. Okay, so if I didn't say already, you might be wondering, where am I going to find this chart? Do I just need to print it out of these notes so I'll have it? Well, this is actually from your book. I mean, you can actually find it in the chapter, but it's also, I think there's a compilation of charts that you might need. I think there's an appendix in the book. But the easiest place to find it would be on our Blackboard page. If you go to the proctored exam link in the very top, on the very top of the page, when you click on that, there should be an item that's in red that says proctored exam formulas or formula sheet for the proctored exam, something like that. That is the pages that you can take with you to the final exam. Okay, so it has some of the formulas we use, it has all the charts that we use. So if you want to go ahead and print that out now, that'll be helpful to you so you can be using it as you go along on your homework and on your test, so you don't have to keep flipping back and trying to find these notes or flipping back in the book to try to find it. So I would recommend you go ahead and print those formulas formulas and charts off if you haven't already. Now, of course, there's not one just for chapter 13 and just for chapter 8 and all that, but you'll have all the ones you need. You won't need all of them at this time, but you just search for the chart or the formula that you need right now. So that table will be there. We're also going to have a table, I think in the next section it is, for calculating mortgage payments. So, you'll need several different tables for this chapter. So I'd recommend going ahead and printing off that formula sheet if you haven't already. Okay, so looking at this, we're actually doing a comparison here, trying to decide, which is the best option. And so, like we said, that's kind of the whole point of what we're doing. Some in this chapter is trying to decide which is the best choice to save the most money, or to make the most money if you're doing something like a savings account. But in these, we're trying to save money because we've bought something. So let's say your car has finally broken down, unfortunately, and you're on the search for a new one. You find a good deal on a used car at a local dealership for $8,000. You plan to pay $3,000 as a down payment, and you have two options for financing. One is borrow the amount from a finance company at 6.5% add-on interest for 3 years, or borrow from the credit union at 36 payments of $164.50 each. Which option gives you the better rate? So to know what gives you the better rate, you're not looking really at these, you're looking at what is the APR. And we find that by using the chart. Okay, so we're going to work both of these out and then see which one's a better deal. So the finance company has 6.5% add-on interest for 3 years. Okay, so again, the things we need to find are the amount financed and the finance charge. Okay, that's always true when we're looking at trying to calculate the APR. So to find the amount financed, we do the $8,000, which is what you borrowed, right? And you have a $3,000, or I'm sorry, $8,000, which is the cost of the car, $3,000, which is your down payment. So the 8,000 minus 3,000 equals 5,000. The finance charge will be 5,000 times 0.065. That's that 6.5% add-on interest here. And then for 3 years. So times 3 equals 975. So when we calculate our H, we get 975 from here divided by 5,000 from here times 100 equals 1950. Okay, so this was for 3 years, so that means, or well, it gave us 36 monthly payments, right? No, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Right here, it gave us 3 years. We want to convert that into monthly, which would be 36 monthly payments to look it up on the chart. And we want to see where 1950 falls. So 36 months, we've already done down here. 1950 falls right close to this item right there. 1957 is what that says. Our 1950 falls pretty close to that, which would be 12%. Okay, and so that's how we get the 12% there. Now the credit union has 36 monthly payments of 164.50. All right, well, what we can do with that is, when we're usually finding the amount financed and the finance charge, we've kind of done it in this way. But this is set up a little different where it actually tells us what our monthly payments are going to be. So how we can use that is if I multiply my monthly payment times the number of months I pay it, that's going to let me know how much money I'm actually paying for this car on this loan. So 164.50 times 36 gives me 59.22. Now I know I financed $5,000, right? So to find the finance charge, I just subtract these two, right? Because that's going to tell me how much more I'm paying than what I actually financed. So I paid $922 in a finance charge. Of course, I still financed the same amount because I still had the same down payment for either option, okay? So now I would do 922 divided by 5,000 times 100 and I get 1844. This is still at 36 months, so I go back here and see where 1844 falls, and you see it would be between here, and it would be closest to this one, so that would be a rate of 11.5%. Okay, and so you can see that here, so of course the better option here would be the credit union in this case. Okay, So actually on these, we went ahead and calculated the APR for both of them, but there's other ways to figure out which is the best deal. One is if you're calculating H, you want H to be as small as possible, right? Because that's telling you the charge you're paying per $100 that you borrowed. So if this is smaller, here it's saying I pay 18.44 per $100. This one I pay 19.50 per $100. So I already know that this is actually going to be a better deal. I also could look at the finance charge, right? So here the finance charge was 922. Here it was 975. So again, I want my finance charge to be as low as possible. So it looks like by using this method, I'm going to end up saving $50 about versus going with the finance company. Okay, so you can look at those two things as well. Okay, so you don't have to go all the way down to the APR. The reason why we did that is because this says which gives you the better APR. But if you're just working on homework, if it just says which is the better option, you might be able to figure that out when you get just to this point without doing all the way to the APR. Okay, but so there are different ways of deciding how to do that. Okay, using our calculator to solve more complex problems. So this is something you would do with your graphing calculator. Okay, so if you don't have a graphing calculator, you want to be able to do this that we're talking about right now, but that's okay. There shouldn't be any problems like this on your homework. This is just kind of for extra information so you can kind of see how else this might be used. This YouTube example is a really good example going through like how you could use your calculator for car loans or for mortgages or whatever. For car loans, trying to decide what interest rate do I need or how much of a car can I afford if I can afford these monthly payments or whatever. So it's pretty neat. They go kind of step by step on using your calculator there to figure that out. And we will get more into mortgages in the next section. So we'll talk more about that. But here it says you want to consolidate some credit card debt. U.S. Bank is offering $5,000 loans at 8.5%. If you decide to get a $5,000 loan to pay off some of your other high interest credit cards, how much would your monthly payment be if you paid off the loan in 12 months or if you paid off the loan in 24 months? So these things can actually be figured out with this formula, which is called the regular monthly payment formula. That's why it has an R here. The R is for regular monthly payment. So it's saying if you want to pay the same amount over a certain span of time and at the end of that time have $0 remaining, this is going to figure out what that payment needs to be. So you could use this for car loans or mortgages or whatever. Now, when we get to the mortgage section, there's also going to be a chart that we can use instead of this formula. So you don't necessarily ever have to use the formula, but this is just another way of doing it. So you can use the formula, you can use your calculator, or eventually we'll talk about a chart you can use for mortgages. But let's just show how easy this is on the calculator. Okay, so we are going to go to our apps here and of course the finance area and the TVM solver. So really we just need to use this to figure out what all these variables would be. So N is our number of monthly payments. Okay, so how many monthly payments are we going to have here? 12, right? So we're going to pay it off in 12 months, so we'll have 12 monthly payments. Our interest rate is 8.5%. Remember in the calculator, it's a little weird. On this thing, you will put it in as a percentage, not as a decimal. So just put it in as 8.5. The present value, so that's the amount that you're borrowing. Here I am borrowing a $5,000 loan. The payment is what I'm wanting to figure out, so we're not going to do that yet. The future value, well, at the end of these 12 months, what do I want the value of the loan to be? I want it to be 0, right? Because I want to pay it off. So we're going to say 0 there. And then down here, generally, when we're doing types like these where we have monthly payments, it's going to be the PY and the CY are going to be 12. So the PY, remember, means payments per year, and so we're going to have 12 because it's monthly. And CY is compounding per year, which is also going to be 12. Okay, so these are generally going to be 12 for these sections. All right, now what I'm wanting to calculate is the payment, right? So I go back up to the payment area and I let my cursor be there. And I'm going to go to alpha, enter, and that's going to solve it for me, okay? And so it says I need to make a payment of $436 and let's say 10 cents for 12 months, and then I'll have it paid off. Now, again, remember the negative just means that you have to pay that amount, right? So it's not that you don't want to say I'm paying a negative $400. It's just saying that you're putting that money in. And so that's how to think of that, okay? So 436.10 is what we will have here. Sorry, my writing's not too good with this pen here. So 436.10. Now we want to know, what if I wanted to do it over 24 months? Maybe this amount seems like a lot for me to pay off every month. So I'm like, well, what if I change this to a 24-month loan? Okay. Well, all I have to change is up here, right? So now my number of payments is 24. I don't need to change this down here because I'm still making 12 payments per year. These are all based off of the year, okay? So this won't change unless your compounding changed for some reason, okay? Like on some of the compound interest examples we did where it was quarterly or annually or whatever, that would change. But for all these, when we're paying monthly, it's going to stay at 12. So really all I had to change was this up here. Now I can recalculate my payment. So put your cursor there again, go to the alpha enter, and now you see that it would be 227.28, which is much less, right, per month, because now we're spreading it out over 2 years instead of just 1 year. Okay, so this is the amount we would pay if I spread it out over 24 months. But of course, I'm paying less per month, but I'm going to end up paying more over time for that loan, right? Because more interest is accruing the longer I have this loan. So then you might be interested in how much interest am I actually going to pay? So yes, this is a smaller amount, so I may like that part, but I need to see how much interest will I actually end up paying. So how do we do that? Well, to do that, we just need to multiply our payment times the number of months, and that's going to tell us how much I'm actually paying. So 436.10 times 12 is 5233.20. So is that how much interest I'm paying? No, that's how much I'm paying in total for this loan, right? But I borrowed 5,000. Okay, so that was how much I actually wanted, was the $5,000. So if I subtract this from 5,000, then that says that I had $233.20 of interest. Okay, so that would be the amount of interest that I paid. Now let's see what it is if I do it for 24 months. So I'm going to take this number, 227.28 times 24, and I get 54.72. All right, so I need to subtract that from 5,000 or subtract 5,000 from that, and that gives me interest of $454.72. So by extending the loan another year, I basically end up paying about double in interest, right? So I go from 233 to 454. So then I need to decide, is it more important to me to have a lower monthly payment Or is it more important to me to save money over time and pay less interest? So if you pay it off quicker, of course you pay less interest. If you spread it out longer, you pay a lower monthly payment, but you end up with more interest at the end of the term. So, that's just something you would have to decide. If you can't afford this every month, then this would have to be the better option, and you would just have to deal with the fact that, hey, over that additional 12 months, I'm going to end up paying an extra 220 something dollars. Okay. And that might not be a big deal to you, especially, if you need this $5,000 loan to pay off your high interest credit cards. You're probably saving some money in that case because you might have a, really high interest on your credit card. And so it's worth it to you to pay that little additional there so that you can have a lower monthly payment. All right, so I think that is the end of this chapter. Yeah, this is the last slide we've got. It's not the end of the chapter, I'm sorry, it's the end of this section. We still have some more to get to. So this was the end of 13.3. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to email me at angela.galloway@kctcs.edu. You can also do the help my or ask my instructor on the help section of all your homework problems if you need anything there. All right. Okay, thanks.